A shockwave ricocheted through the Galactic Council chambers as the emergency transmission crackled onto the screen. Humans, a young spacefaring race, had secretly amassed a fleet of 500,000 ancient warships. Warships that dwarfed the combined military might of every species in the galaxy. "Impossible!" sputtered Counselor Zorax, his tentacles flailing. "Those primitives can barely travel between stars, let alone restore technology that advanced." "And yet the intel is irrefutable," Altair, the Zanari leader, replied gravely. He gestured to the holodisplay, which showed grainy footage of gargantuan ships emerging from the void. Alexander King, humanity's representative, sat impassively as pandemonium erupted. Shouts rang out from a dozen alien throats, each more accusatory than the last. "You hairless apes have been plotting against us from the beginning. Warmongers, conquerors. This cannot stand. The Council must intervene at once." King rose to his feet, drawing himself up to his full height. The cacophony quieted as hundreds of eyes fixed on him. "I will not confirm or deny these reports," he stated calmly. "But know this, since humanity first ventured into the stars, we have faced nothing but hostility, prejudice, and threats from this very council. Is it any wonder we would seek the means to defend ourselves?" The resulting uproar nearly shook the chamber walls. Altair raised a clawed hand for silence, his face unreadable. In a private meeting afterwards, he confronted King directly. The truth, now. King sighed. "We found them, Altair. A ghost fleet, abandoned by some long-dead race on a remote world we colonized. What would you have done in our place? We are newcomers in a galaxy that despises us. Those ships may be our only chance to survive." Altair's heart felt heavy. Part of him understood humanity's desperation. But a single species commanding such firepower, it would destabilize the delicate web of alliances and rivalries that held the galaxy together. Already, reports flooded in of factions mobilizing fleets, readying armies, vying to either crush the humans or court their favor. "Your people have opened Pandora's box," Altair said wearily. "This revelation paints a target on every human world, colony, and outpost. You have made dangerous enemies today." King's jaw tightened. "Then it is fortunate we are not defenseless." As news of the Phantom Fleet spread, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The humans had kicked the hornet's nest, and now every species, friends and foes alike, raced to uncover their secrets. The fate of trillions hung in the balance. For better or worse, the discovery had catapulted humanity to the center stage. What they did next would shape the very future of galactic civilization. As the Dauntless soared through the void, Alexander King strode into the dimly lit war room. A dozen battle-hardened admirals snapped to attention, their faces etched with relentless drive. King wasted no time. He pulled up a star map, the holographic display casting an eerie glow. "Gentlemen, we face a galaxy on the brink. The revelation of our fleet has painted a target on every human back. We must act swiftly to secure our position and protect our people." Admiral Graves, a grizzled veteran, leaned forward. "What's the plan, sir?" "Two-pronged approach," King replied. "First, diplomacy. We send envoys to potential allies, races who've shown glimmers of openness to human relations. But we need more than words. I want recon missions launched yesterday. Deep scans of hostile factions' military assets, fleet movements, anything that gives us an edge." Nods of approval circled the room. Admiral Zhukov chimed in. "Knowledge is power. We stay one step ahead, anticipate their moves." As the meeting adjourned and the admirals dispersed to their tasks, light years away, a different sort of gathering was unfolding. In the shadows of a Zanari outpost, a hooded figure slipped a data chip to their contact, a covert operative on the alien payroll. The operative's scaled hand closed around the chip. "The humans will pay dearly for this," they hissed. Cycles later, the operative knelt before the Archon Council, a conclave of Zanari elite. "I bring troubling news," they intoned, sliding the data chip into a terminal. Schematics of the ancient warships flashed across the screen, alongside grainy footage of human fleet yards. The Archons recoiled as if struck. One slammed a fist on the table. Unacceptable! The primitives have grown too bold. We must rally the other races and contain this threat at once. Back on Earth, Alexander King paced before a wall of screens. Each showed a different alien leader, some receptive, others coldly aloof. A flashing icon caught his eye, an incoming transmission from the Crack-6 homeworld. King tapped the screen and a fierce reptilian face filled the frame. "Greetings, human," the Crack-6 leader rasped. "I am Warlord Karath. Your display of strength has earned our respect. The Crack-6 offer an alliance. Let us be the shield that guards your borders, and in return, grant us the means to bolster our own might." King smiled tightly. The Crack-6 were not to be trusted lightly, but with enemies circling, humanity needed every asset it could muster. "Warlord Karath, I believe we can come to an arrangement. Shall we discuss the specifics?" As the negotiations unfolded, Altair stalked the corridors of his flagship, his thoughts dark and roiling. The human Crack-6 pact was an ill omen, a sign of the coming storm. He had seen the schematics, the sheer destructive power of the ancient fleet. If the humans were not contained, if their allies grew. He shuddered at the thought. Entering the bridge, he addressed his senior officers. "Summon the collective. The time for half measures is past. We must forge a united front against human aggression, and if diplomacy fails..." His eyes glinted coldly. "Then we must be prepared to use any means necessary to preserve galactic peace." Light years away on the Dauntless's bridge, Alexander King watched the stars streak by, his heart made. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but he would not, could not, allow humanity to be cowed or broken. Not after all they had endured to reach the stars. He opened a secure channel to the admirals. "Put the fleet on high alert. If the worst comes to pass, we must be ready to deploy at a moment's notice, and double our efforts on the intel front. I want to know what our enemies are planning before they do." As the transmission ended, King sagged back in his chair, the weight of worlds on his shoulders. The drumbeats of war echoed in the distance, and humanity stood at the center of the maelstrom. Come what may, they would face the coming storm with courage and perseverance. The fate of their species hung in the balance. The comm unit on King's desk blinked urgently, interrupting his thoughts. He tapped the screen, revealing the face of a human operative, her features obscured by static. "Sir, critical intel incoming. The Zanari, they're building something big. A weapons platform that could neutralize our fleet's tech advantage." King's blood ran cold. "Details now." The operative's voice crackled with interference. "Massive structure, deep in Zanari space. If they finish it..." The transmission cut out abruptly. King pounded his fist on the desk. This changed everything. Within the hour, King stood before a gathering of human admirals and Crack-6 leaders. The war room buzzed with tension as he laid out the situation. "We have no choice," Admiral Graves growled. "That platform goes down, or we might as well scuttle our fleet now." Warlord Karath, joining via hologram, bared his teeth. The Crack-6 stand ready to spill Zanari blood. King raised a hand. "We can't risk open war, not yet. This has to be quick, quiet, and precise." He outlined his plan. The Dauntless would lead a stealth mission, carrying a team of elite human commandos to infiltrate and destroy the platform. Karath's eyes gleamed. "Allow us to provide a distraction. The Zanari will be too busy watching our border to notice your approach." As the Dauntless slipped into Zanari space, cloaked and silent, Altair paced the bridge of his flagship. Something felt off. Reports of unusual Crack-6 fleet movements trickled in. "Deploy scout ships," he ordered. "I want to know what those lizards are up to." Unaware of the danger, the human strike team reached the massive Zanari weapons platform. They moved swiftly, planting explosives at key structural points. Sergeant Chen, leader of Alpha Squad, whispered into his comm. "Charges set. Moving to the next..." Alarms blared. Zanari voices shouted in alien tongues. "We've been made!" Chen yelled as energy bolts sizzled past. The commandos dove for cover, returning fire. Back on Earth, King juggled a dozen holo screens, each showing the face of a different alien leader. Some hurled accusations, others demanded explanations. "I assure you," King said, fighting to keep his voice steady, "humanity seeks only to defend itself against clear violations of galactic law." On the weapons platform, the human strike team found themselves pinned down. Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "We're cut off from the extraction point. There's too many of them." Captain Sarah Morrison of the Dauntless clenched her fists. "Stealth is blown, taking us in. All hands, battle stations." The Dauntless decloaked, guns blazing. Zanari warships scrambled to intercept. Chen and his team fought their way through Zanari security forces, leaving a trail of destruction. They reached the final junction, but Zanari troops closed in from all sides. "For Earth!" Chen roared, slamming his hand down on the detonator. The weapons platform erupted in a chain of explosions. The Dauntless barely escaped the expanding fireball, her hull scarred and burning. In the aftermath, King stood before a wall of screens displaying tactical readouts. The galaxy teetered on the edge of all-out war. The Zanari screamed for blood. King took a deep breath. The ancient fleet would be their trump card, but it wouldn't be enough on its own. They needed allies, strategies, every advantage they could muster. "Get me our top strategists," he ordered, "and contact the Crack-6. If we're going to survive this, we'll need everyone." As reports flooded in from across the galaxy, King steeled himself for the battles to come. The true test of humanity's commitment had only just begun. King's eyes burned from hours of staring at holographic displays. He blinked, refocusing on the swirling mass of data extracted from Altair's captured flagship. Suddenly, a pattern emerged. "There," he said, jabbing a finger at a cluster of coordinates. "That's where they're building it." Admiral Graves leaned in, his weathered face creasing with concern. "A rogue dwarf planet. Clever bastards." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. A Zanari superweapon, hidden in the depths of space, capable of obliterating entire fleets. King's eyes sharp. "We hit it," he said, voice iron hard. "Now, before they can bring it online." Hours later, King stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, surrounded by a strike force of ancient stealth ships and sleek Thrax bioships. The jump drives hummed, ready to tear a hole in space-time. "All ships engage cloaks," King ordered. "Execute jump on my mark." Reality twisted, stars blurring into streaks. They emerged in a system dominated by a bloated red dwarf. There, orbiting a lifeless planetoid, loomed the Zanari shipyard. Thrusters fired silently as the strike force maneuvered into position. On the planet's surface, hatches opened. Human commandos and Thrax biomechs rappelled down, boots crunching on regolith as they sprinted toward the facility. Inside the shipyard, alarms blared. A Zanari officer's tentacles writhed in agitation. "Intruders! How did they—" His words were cut short by a burst of plasma fire. Human commandos poured through the breach, securing choke points with brutal efficiency. In orbit, the Dauntless shimmered into view, weapons blazing. Energy beams lanced out from the Zanari defense platforms, pummeling the ancient flagship's shields. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Trenton barked. "Return fire, all batteries." The Dauntless corkscrewed through space, its broadsides unleashing devastation. Zanari corvettes exploded, reduced to clouds of superheated gas. On the ground, Jason Drake led his team through winding corridors. They encountered fierce resistance, Zanari defenders fighting with the desperation of cornered animals. Drake's rifle spat death, each shot finding its mark. "Push forward," he shouted over the din of battle. "We need to reach that core." Meanwhile, Thrax biomechs tore through power relays, their organic forms jam-packed with weaponry. Sparks flew as critical systems went dark. The Dauntless shuddered under continuous fire. On the bridge, Admiral Trenton gripped his chair. "Maintain position. We need to keep their attention off the ground teams." Drake's squad breached the final security door, spilling into the superweapon's central chamber. Massive power conduits pulsed with ominous energy. "Sir," a tech shouted, "they've initiated some kind of overload sequence." Drake's mind raced. "Plant the charges, we've got seconds." His team worked with frantic precision, slapping high-yield explosives onto vital junctures. The chamber trembled, debris raining down. "Charges set!" Drake yelled into his comm. "Everyone out now!" They ran, boots pounding on metal grates. Behind them, Zanari troops gave chase, energy bolts sizzling past their heads. Drake fired blindly over his shoulder, buying precious seconds. The strike teams reached their extraction points, scrambling aboard waiting shuttles. As they lifted off, the dwarf planet convulsed. The superweapon tore itself apart in a cataclysmic chain reaction. A shockwave rippled through space, battering the retreating ships. The Dauntless's hull groaned under the strain. "Intrasystem jump," Trenton ordered. "Get us out of here." They limped away, leaving devastation in their wake. In the aftermath, King's voice crackled over the comms. "Well done, all of you," he said, exhaustion and pride mingling in his tone. "The Zanari superweapon is no more." As medical teams tended to the wounded, King turned his attention to the broader conflict. The Zanari war machine had been dealt a crippling blow. Now was the time to press their advantage. He opened channels to neutral worlds, his voice resonating with conviction. "The tide is turning," he declared. "Join us, and together we'll forge a new future for the galaxy." Across thousands of light years, leaders listened, some with hope, others with trepidation, but all knew that the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. In the shadows, Altair seethed, his escape pod drifting through the void. His eyes burned with hate as he vowed revenge against the humans who had cost him everything. King leaned over the holographic display, his eyes fixed on the pulsing red dots representing Zanari logistics hubs. The captured intel from Altair's flagship had proven invaluable. He turned to the assembled officers, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of the war room's screens. "Gentlemen, our next move will cripple the Zanari war machine," King said, his voice low and intense. "We hit these supply hubs simultaneously, cutting off their frontline fleets." Admiral Trenton nodded, studying the tactical overlay. "A bold strategy, sir, but the risks are considerable," King finished. "I know, but the ancient fleet gives us an edge they won't expect." Hours later, the Dauntless hung in the void, its stealth systems engaged as it led the vanguard force toward the primary Zanari hub. On the bridge, Trenton gripped the arms of his command chair. "All ships prepare to decloak on my mark," he ordered. 3, 2, 1, now." The human fleet shimmered into view, weapons already firing. Zanari defense platforms erupted in flames as energy beams lanced through their hulls. Trenton barked orders as the Dauntless weaved through a hail of return fire. "Bring us in close. Prep dropships for deployment." In the launch bay, Captain Sarah Chen strapped herself into the pilot's seat of the lead assault craft. Her team of commandos checked their gear one last time as the bay doors slid open. "This is it, people," Chen said over the squad comm. "We go in fast and hard. Failure is not an option." The dropships rocketed out of the Dauntless, streaking toward the massive Zanari station. Point defense turrets opened up, filling space with sizzling bolts of energy. Chen's hands danced over the controls as she jinked and rolled, narrowly avoiding destruction. "Shields down to 30%, her co-pilot shouted. "Almost there," Chen gritted her teeth. "Hang on!" Their dropship slammed into the station's docking bay, skidding across the deck in a shower of sparks. The rear hatch blew open and Chen's team poured out, weapons at the ready. Zanari defenders swarmed into the bay, their alien battle cries echoing off the metal walls. Chen's rifle spat bursts of plasma, dropping 2 chitinous soldiers in quick succession. "Push forward," she yelled. "We need to reach that reactor complex." As they fought their way deeper into the station, Chen's comm crackled with updates from the other strike teams. The secondary hubs were under assault, Zanari forces scrambling to respond to the unexpected attacks. In another system, Commander Jack Hayes watched from the bridge of his stealth frigate as volleys of hunter-killer missiles streaked toward their target. "Direct hits confirmed," his tactical officer reported. "The Zanari fleet is in disarray." Hayes allowed himself a grim smile. "Good. Let's make sure they stay that way. All ships, commence attack pattern Delta." Back on the primary hub, Chen's team reached the central reactor. As her demolitions expert rigged the charges, she radioed the Dauntless. "Reactor primed for overload," she reported, requesting immediate extraction. "Copy that." Trenton's voice came back. "Get your people out of there now, Captain. We've got incoming bogies." Chen herded her team back toward the extraction point, trading fire with pursuing Zanari troops. As they piled into the waiting dropship, the station rocked with the first explosions. The Dauntless's shields flared as it weathered a barrage from newly arrived Zanari reinforcements. Trenton called out to his helmsman, "Get us out of here. All ships, execute emergency jump." A brilliant flash lit up the view screen as the Zanari hub detonated. Similar reports flooded in from the other strike teams. All 3 targets destroyed. As they limped away from the systems, battered but victorious, King addressed the fleet. "Well done, all of you," he said, his voice carrying a mix of pride and weariness. "We've dealt the Zanari a crippling blow, but make no mistake, this war is a long way to go." In the days that followed, King found himself in near-constant communication with leaders from across the galaxy. The daring strikes had not gone unnoticed. Alexander King stood before the holographic display, his eyes fixed on the swirling mass of tactical data. The string of victories against the Zanari had bolstered morale, but he knew the war was not nearly finished. "Admiral Trenton, are your forces ready for Operation Bottleneck?" King asked, his voice steady and focused. Trenton nodded, his weathered face set with purpose. "Yes, sir. The Dauntless is prepped, and our stealth frigates are on standby. The Thrax bioship squadrons are in position and awaiting orders." "Good," King said. "Kiris Prime is the linchpin of Zanari shipbuilding. We take it out, we cripple their war machine." Hours later, the strike force materialized in the Kiris system, emerging from hyperspace with pinpoint precision. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Trenton barked orders. "Establish the perimeter. I want those hyperlane choke points locked down tight." Human warships fanned out, their advanced stealth systems rendering them invisible to Zanari sensors. Precision strikes neutralized patrol craft before they could raise the alarm. "Sir, we've sealed off all warp routes," the tactical officer reported. "Kiris Prime is cut off." Trenton allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. "Commence bombardment of the orbital shipyards. Let's see how they function without supplies or reinforcements." The skies above Kiris Prime lit up as human weapons rained destruction upon Zanari industry. Incomplete warships shattered under the onslaught, tumbling through space in broken pieces. In a nearby system, Altair paced the deck of his command ship, tentacles writhing in agitation. "We must break this blockade," he hissed. "Gather the armada. We will crush them with overwhelming force." As Zanari ships gathered for the assault, King's foresight paid off. Human commandos, having infiltrated the staging grounds days earlier, activated their secret weapon. "Virus deployed," the team leader whispered into his comm. "Uploading to Zanari systems. Now." Chaos erupted across the Zanari fleet as ship after ship lost warp capabilities. Altair watched in horror as his mighty armada became sitting ducks. "What is happening?" he shrieked. "Get those drives back online!" But it was too late. Human Marines and Thrax vanguards smashed through the disorganized Zanari lines. Boarding parties swarmed command vessels, including Altair's flagship. On Kiris Prime, Admiral Trenton pressed his advantage. "All ships focus fire on those orbital defense platforms. I want them neutralized." The sustained blockade took its toll. Zanari defenses crumbled under the relentless assault. Trenton's voice crackled over the comms to the planet-side forces. "Attention, Zanari ground forces. Your orbital support is gone. Your supply lines are cut. Surrender now or face annihilation. In the ensuing pandemonium, Altair slipped away once more, his escape pod vanishing into the void. But the damage was done. With their industry paralyzed and supply lines severed, Zanari factions began to fracture. King addressed the leaders of neutral worlds, his voice firm. The tide has turned. Join us now and help forge a new era of peace. Many Zanari sued for peace, but a hardline group remained defiant. Their fragmented forces began launching guerrilla strikes against human targets. Admiral Trenton grimaced as reports of hit-and-run attacks flooded in. "Disperse the fleet," he ordered. "Hunt down these raiders. We can't let them destabilize what we've won." King stood before the cameras, his expression solemn as he addressed humanity and its allies. "Major combat operations have concluded, but we face a new threat. Zanari insurgents who refuse to accept defeat. We will remain vigilant, protecting our hard-won peace." As King finished his address, an urgent message flashed across his private screen. His eyes widened as he read the report from Deep Recon scouts. "Sir," his aide said, voice tight with concern, "you need to see this immediately." King studied the data, his blood running cold. Somewhere out there, Altair and his fanatics were building something terrible, a massive mobile shipyard that could turn the tide of war once more. King's eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display, his fingers drumming on the war room table. The prototype's warp signature pulsed ominously amidst a sea of civilian transponders. "Damn it, Altair," he muttered, jaw clenching. Admiral Trenton leaned in, his voice low. "Sir, we can't let that ship escape. The technology on board could turn the tide of this war." King nodded, his expression grim. "And we can't risk millions of innocent lives. Trenton, get me a direct line to that system's planetary defense network, now." Moments later, a harried-looking official appeared on screen. "This is Governor Vex of the Centauri Confederation, who—" "Governor, this is Alexander King of the Human Alliance," King cut in, his tone brooking no argument. "You have a Zanari warship in your system. It's using your civilian population as shields." Vex's eyes widened. "What? But the Zanari signed a non-aggression pact with us years ago." "That pact is worth less than the data it's stored on," King said. "I need you to initiate an immediate planet-wide evacuation. Get your people to shelters now." As Vex scrambled to comply, King turned to his tactical officer. "I want precision targeting solutions on that prototype. Weapons free, but for the love of God, watch your collateral." The Dauntless surged forward, ancient engines thrumming with power. On the bridge, crewmen called out sensor readings as they closed in on their prey. "Target acquired," the weapons officer announced. "Firing solution locked." King took a deep breath. "Fire." Lances of energy streaked across space, striking the prototype's shields. The Zanari vessel shuddered under the assault, veering wildly to avoid the barrage. "Direct hit," someone shouted, "but their shields are holding." King gritted his teeth. "Keep firing. We need to disable that ship before—" A blinding flash cut him off. The prototype had opened fire, its advanced weaponry tearing through a nearby orbital station. Debris and bodies tumbled into the void. "Casualties reported on Centauri Prime," Trenton said, his voice tight. "Civilian centers hit." King's fists clenched. "Push them away from the planets. Use the Thrax bioships to herd them if you have to, but get that bastard away from population centers." The space around Centauri Prime erupted into chaos. Human fighters swarmed the prototype, peppering its shields with gunfire. Thrax vessels moved in concert, their organic hulls pulsing with strange energies as they maneuvered to cut off escape routes. On the prototype's bridge, Altair snarled orders to his crew. "Divert all power to engines. We must break free." The massive ship lurched forward, its hull crackling with energy as it prepared for another jump. King watched in horror as it accelerated toward a densely populated moon. "All ships, open fire," he roared. "Stop that ship at any cost." A hail of weaponry converged on the prototype. Its shields flickered and died, leaving the hull exposed. Explosions rippled across its surface as it careened out of control. In a daring plan, Altair engaged the warp drive. Space twisted around the crippled vessel, and it vanished in a flash of light. King sagged in his chair, the weight of lives lost heavy on his shoulders. "Damage report," he said quietly. Trenton's voice was solemn. "Significant civilian casualties on Centauri Prime and the outer colonies. The orbital station is gone, sir, but we stopped the prototype from escaping intact." King nodded, his eyes fixed on the statistics scrolling across his display. "Begin search and rescue operations immediately. And get me a lock on that prototype's last known trajectory. This isn't over." As the Dauntless moved to assist the battered Centauri system, King couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a new, deadly phase of the war. King stood before the holographic display, his face etched with the weight of his decision. The prototype warship's signal blinked tauntingly at the edge of the system. "Cease pursuit," he ordered, his voice low but firm. "We can't risk more civilian casualties." Admiral Trenton's eyes widened. "Sir, if we let them escape—" "I know the cost," King cut him off. "But the price of chasing them through populated space is too high. We'll find another way." As the fleet disengaged, King's fists clenched at his sides. "This isn't over, Altair," he muttered. Hours later, alarms blared across the command center. A young lieutenant burst in, datapad in hand. "Sir, long-range scouts report activity in the Crimson Nebula, Altair's shipyard. It's powering up." King's eyes narrowed. "Show me." The holographic display shifted, revealing a massive structure nestled within swirling clouds of ionized gas. Energy readings spiked as assembly lines hummed to life. "All ships, battle stations," King barked into the comm. "Recall our FAR patrols. We need every available vessel here now." The Dauntless surged forward, leading a hastily assembled strike force. Fighters swarmed from launch bays, their engines burning hot as they raced toward the nebula. On the bridge, Trenton called out, "First wave, engage. Harass those outer defenses." Human vessels dove into the crimson mists, weapons blazing. Zanari turrets returned fire, energy beams cutting through the nebula's haze. "Sir," a sensor operator called out, "we're detecting new ship signatures. They're launching vessels faster than we can destroy them." King's eyes sharp. "Keep the pressure on. We can't let them establish a foothold." Days blurred into weeks as the battle raged. Human crews pushed themselves to the brink, executing daring hit-and-run attacks on the shipyard's vital systems. But for every small victory, Altair seemed to have a counter-move ready. In a secure briefing room, King met with representatives from the Coalition's newest allies. A tall avian being stepped forward, its feathers shimmering with an iridescent sheen. "We have located the source of Altair's new alloys," it trilled, "a heavily fortified world in the Epsilon sector." King leaned forward, studying the data. "If we cut off his supply, it could cripple his entire war machine," the alien finished. King nodded, his mind racing. "Get me Jason Drake." Hours later, Drake crouched in the belly of a stealth frigate, surrounded by his team of elite commandos. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of warp, skimming the atmosphere of a barren, rocky world. "Remember," Drake said, his voice low and intense, "our primary objective is data retrieval. The charges are a last resort." As the frigate's bay doors opened, Drake caught a glimpse of writhing organic shapes in the distance, Thrax bioships, drawing Zanari fire away from their insertion point. The commandos rappelled onto the planet's surface, boots crunching on rust-colored gravel. Ahead loomed a sprawling industrial complex, its walls filled with defense turrets. "Move out," Drake ordered. They fought their way through automated defenses and Zanari security forces, each step bringing them closer to the facility's heart. Drake's breath came in ragged gasps as he fired, ducked, and rolled, the acrid smell of ozone filling his nostrils. Finally, they reached the central control hub. Drake's fingers flew across alien interfaces, copying schematics and production data. Alarms blared as the facility went into full lockdown. "We're out of time," Drake growled. He hesitated for a split second, then keyed in the detonation sequence. Everyone out now. They sprinted back the way they came, Zanari forces hot on their heels. As they piled into the waiting frigate, the ground shook violently. A massive fireball erupted behind them, consuming the entire complex. Across the galaxy, Altair received the news of the raid. His tentacles writhed in fury as he screamed at his subordinates. "Launch everything! I want those human vermin wiped from existence!" A wave of advanced Zanari warships surged from the shipyard, their hulls gleaming with strange, almost organic patterns. They struck without warning, tearing through human outposts with terrifying ease. On a frontier colony, civilians huddled in bunkers as the sky lit up with weapons fire. Ancient human shields buckled under the onslaught, unable to repel the devastating new weaponry. King watched in horror as reports flooded in from across Coalition space. "All ships converge on the Omega sector," he ordered. "We stop them here, or we lose everything." The void erupted in chaos as the combined might of the human fleet, alongside their Thrax allies, clashed with Altair's forces. Massive dreadnoughts traded broadsides, their armor scarred and burning. Fighters dueled in tight formations, explosions blossoming in the darkness of space. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Trenton barked orders as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. "Divert power to forward shields. Target their lead vessel." King watched the battle unfold, his heart pounding. They were holding their own, but for every Zanari ship they destroyed, another seemed to take its place. The grim reality settled over him like a shroud. This war of attrition could not be won through firepower alone. King watched the tactical display, his face etched with exhaustion as another human outpost winked out of existence. The Zanari warships tore through their defenses with brutal efficiency, leaving nothing but debris in their wake. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Orion colony," a young lieutenant reported, her voice strained. King's fingers dug into the armrests of his command chair. "How many civilians?" "Over 2 million, sir." The bridge fell silent, the weight of those lives pressing down on every soul present. King closed his eyes, fighting back the wave of despair threatening to overwhelm him. Admiral Trenton approached, his face grim but determined. "We can't keep fighting like this, sir. We need to change tactics." "What do you propose?" King asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Trenton's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "We use the Dauntless as bait. Draw Altair's full fleet into a trap." King's head snapped up. "That's suicide, Trenton. We can't risk—" "With all due respect, sir," Trenton cut in, "we're already dying. This gives us a chance to end it." King stared at the man, weighing the cost against the potential gain. Finally, he nodded. "Do it." Hours later, the Dauntless streaked through space, its ancient engines pushed to their limits. Trenton stood on the bridge, barking orders as they executed a series of hit-and-run attacks on Zanari supply lines. "Incoming transmission," the comms officer called out. "It's Altair." The Zanari leader's face filled the viewscreen, his tentacles writhing with rage. "You dare challenge me, human? I will crush you and your pathetic ship." Trenton allowed himself a grim smile. "Catch us if you can, you overgrown squid." The Dauntless dove and weaved through asteroid fields and nebulae, always staying just out of reach of Altair's pursuing armada. Trenton's hands flew over the controls, executing a series of intricate warp jumps that left their enemies disoriented and furious. "Sir," the navigation officer called out, "we're approaching the nebula shipyards." Trenton nodded. "Take us in. Prepare for final approach." The Dauntless erupted from warp space directly in the heart of Altair's production facility. Klaxons blared as Zanari ships scrambled to respond. "Shields to maximum," Trenton roared. "All power to forward batteries." The space around them erupted in a firestorm of energy weapons and torpedoes. Coalition ships hidden throughout the nebula opened fire, catching Altair's forces in a devastating crossfire. Trenton watched as Altair's flagship bore down on them, its massive hull filled with weapons. He knew what had to be done. "Engineering," he called out. "Prepare to overload the warp drives on my mark." The crew looked at him in shock, but there was no time for goodbyes. Altair's ship loomed ever closer, filling the view screen. "Now!" Trenton shouted. The Dauntless's reactors screamed in protest as they were pushed beyond their limits. A blinding white light engulfed the bridge, and Trenton's last thought was of Earth, shining blue and beautiful in the darkness of space. The explosion ripped through the nebula like a newborn star. Altair's flagship vanished in an instant, consumed by the unimaginable energies unleashed. The shipyards crumbled, torn apart by secondary explosions that rippled outward in all directions. Zanari ships caught in the blast wave were flung about like leaves in a hurricane, their hulls shredding as they collided with debris and each other. Those that tried to flee found themselves trapped by the nebula's treacherous electromagnetic currents, amplified to lethal levels by the detonation. As the carnage subsided, King stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the haunting image before him. The gutted remains of the Dauntless drifted amid the cosmic graveyard, a silent testament to the cost of their victory. "Sir," a lieutenant approached, her voice soft. "We're receiving reports from across the sector. The remaining Zanari forces, they're surrendering." King nodded, unable to tear his eyes from the wreckage. "Confirm Altair's status." Minutes passed in tense silence before the answer came. "Coalition intelligence confirms. Altair is dead, sir. It's over." The words should have brought relief, but King felt only a profound emptiness. He thought of Trenton, of the countless others who had given their lives to reach this moment. "Prepare a statement," he said quietly. "We'll hold a memorial for the fallen. All of them." Days later, King stood before a solemn gathering of humans and aliens alike. The charred hull plating from the Dauntless served as a backdrop, a visceral reminder of their shared sacrifice. "We gather here today," King began, his voice carrying across the silent crowd, "to honor those who gave everything so that we might live in peace." He spoke of heroism and sacrifice, of the bonds forged between species in the crucible of war. As he concluded, King made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the assembly. "Effective immediately, I am ordering the decommissioning of Earth's remaining war fleet. Never again will such destructive power be wielded by a single race." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but King pressed on. "In its place, we will establish a coalition governing council. All species will have a voice, and together, we will forge a new path forward." In the days that followed, the galaxy began the long process of healing. King worked tirelessly to build trust between former enemies, emphasizing cooperation and shared oversight of dangerous technologies. Yet even as the last of the mighty warships were dismantled, whispers began to circulate. Salvage crews operating in uncharted regions reported finding ancient wrecks of unknown origin. The tech they recovered hinted at capabilities far beyond anything seen in the recent conflict. King listened to these reports with growing unease. The war was over, but he couldn't shake the feeling that an even greater challenge loomed on the horizon. For now, though, there was work to be done, and a hard-won peace to protect.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.